Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
I'm Jenna Brown.
I'm not Jenna Brown or Christine Daigle, but I am Kevin Tumlinson,
And JD is in New York this week, apparently recording something for Sirius for his
Yep,
new book.
which
gallivanting.
is kind of unfortunate because that whole intro would have thrown him off to the point where he would have sat in silence for a good 5 minutes,
That's true.
maybe three. I'll give him some credit.
Oh,
Oh,
well, why hope New York is eventful and that he
yeah,
doesn't get into any trouble.
Is
yeah.
that where
I
he
don't
is?
think so. He took his daughter, right? So he's got his daughter on his own. So I'm just wondering how that interview, what she's going to be doing during that interview.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't this what no, what's he doing? It's like XM
Sirius
radio or
XM
something? Yeah.
radio, yeah, the satellite radio, doing some interviews for the Something I Keep Upstairs.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah,
Yeah,
fair. Fair.
just more exciting than what I'm doing this week. So
What's your week looking like? What you got?
work.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yes.
No.
Homework,
Yep.
work.
Homework, work.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Kara's
Yep.
been at a conference for the past couple of days. She's going to be there for the rest of the week, and so it's just been me and the dog. So that's been nice. It's been
Little mini
quiet. Yeah, little Minnie,
Kevin
who
and
comes
Minnie
up
time.
periodically to remind me that she's here. I took her for a walk earlier, which she likes to do. She gets really excited about it, and we don't do it enough, but took her for a walk. And what I do is I let her direct everything. So she drags me around. She tends to go in the same pattern back and forth up and down the
Hmm.
block. And then suddenly she's just done and she wanders up to the door. So I need to
That's
take her more often, let her do that. She doesn't get
my
out much.
dog. It's like she paces herself, so she'll sort of like walk behind for like the first half of the walk. But as soon as we reach, because we kind of have like, we have a few different paths that we take, but she knows when we are headed home. And suddenly she's in front, she's got all this energy, she's
Yeah.
like taking charge.
Lead the way.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
I
She
have no
likes to
frame of
finish
reference.
strong. I don't know.
I don't know. I have no
You know,
frame of reference for this. I have a cat. So
you don't
Oh,
do dogs? Are you an anti-dog person?
no, I like dogs. We're just not
Okay.
home enough that I would feel cool about having a dog. When I
Cats
retire,
are a
maybe.
lot more low maintenance for sure. Like
can I
Yeah.
when
tell
Kara and
you that
I
a cat
got
adopted Eric?
oh really?
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't think that was legal in the United
Um,
States.
yeah,
So,
well, you can't
it
really
is in
tell a
Nevada.
cat what to do.
Wait, did I say it
So,
wrong? Nevada? Correct us.
Nevada, thank you.
Nevada.
There you go, Nevada. Um, yeah, I guess she's a stray and she just started poking her head in the yard when he was out there over the last month, and she just started coming more and more and spending more time and hanging out in the yard. And
that's how they get
she
you.
went in the
That's how they
garage
get you.
and now she's adopted Eric.
Yeah.
She really wants to be in the house, but the dogs are not quite as enthusiastic about that. It doesn't help that she tried to pounce on both of them in the yard and they're tiny dogs and she's a lot bigger. So
Yeah.
they're like, you're not going to kill me. Anyway, we
Yeah.
now have a garage cat.
All
There you
right.
go.
It's the moral of the story.
That's awesome. I guess on that, Kevin, what's in the news?
Speaking of news, I have some. Scamming Pizza Hut was my family tradition. Quote Kevin Tumlinson.
Yes.
This Pizza Hut Book It program started in 1984 and is still in existence. Fill out a Book It exclamation point slip, get it signed by your teacher, then take it to your local Pizza Hut and exchange it for a free personal pan pizza. Book It is free for schools and students pre-K through sixth grade. Students are eligible as well as children who are homeschooled. In Kim Kelly's story, she confesses to cheating Pizza Hut's Book It program. When she continuously read books and brought slips to her teacher put a limit on the slips, so she had to turn elsewhere. The scheme involved the author's mother and grandmother, a retired teacher who could sign off on the required reading slips, ensuring a steady supply of pizza rewards that turned routine visits into special treats and reading encouragement. But was it a cheat? The author states, quote, as much as we loved the gift, it also meant that we spent a lot of quality time together and that my reading level was stratospheric for a little girl from an underprivileged Nowheresville without a library or a post office. I too cheated the the Pizza Hut thing. I don't remember it being called Book It, but yeah, we did the same thing.
I
I
want to
think,
hear, how did you cheat the Pizza Hut thing?
yeah.
Yeah, no, well, I was a little more nefarious than she. Her story is wholesome. Mine is not. I mean, I just my buddy and I, my little buddy and I swiped they had these little coupon packet things, and we swiped a stack of them off of my teacher's desk and filled them all out and claimed our
Wow.
free
Yep, that
pizza.
is far more
Yeah,
nefarious.
That is
I know.
nefarious.
Yeah,
Yep.
not quite as wholesome. I've
No.
learned. I've grown since then. I'm a whole new man. So,
Oh,
He's since given up pizza.
yeah, I don't eat pizza anymore. So
I was
no
surprised that
need to
this
cheat the
program is
system.
still around. Like,
I
I
was
remember in
too.
the
I didn't think
90s.
it was around
I
anymore.
guess it is, yeah. So
Wow.
you
There
can
used
still
to be a
get those
ton of
pizzas.
programs like this. I remember as a kid, it's like just
Hmm.
about anything could get you, if you were reading regularly, there were all kinds of, it was almost like those coupon books they sell you. You know what I'm talking about? Where you
Hmm.
pay like
Yeah, yeah.
$100 and you get $10,000 in savings. And
Yeah.
we would have all kinds of that stuff growing up. Not just pizza, but like toys and candy and all kinds of
I
stuff.
don't remember when my son was in elementary school, they ever did anything like that. Or maybe he just didn't ask them for it because he just wouldn't want to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to
I don't
ask
know.
him.
I approve of reading for pizza though. I think that's great. Grift on.
Yeah.
Find a retired
Yeah,
teacher.
why not? If you're gonna grift someone, at least do it that way. You know, because what she's saying, she's not saying she didn't read the books, which is
No, she
basically what
read
I'm
them. She
saying
just
we
had her
did.
grandma sign them when her teacher limited her reading. She was a
Yeah,
precocious she was aggressively precocious. That's what
Agre-
Aggressively precocious. This is my like new favorite phrase ever. I
the
thinking
love
Kevin
about
it.
Tumlinson
pizza.
story.
Yeah.
Uh, we should move on. So, the next headline: the first folding e-reader is smaller than a paperback. I'm gonna try this without laughing. I'm sorry, because this word cracks me up. I'm sorry. Readmoo introduces the MooLink. I think it's MooLink.
Moo
MooLink
Inc. I think it's
5.
Moo Inc.
Moo Inc.
Yeah.
Moo Inc. That is the much more logical. All right. Readmoo introduces the Moo Inc. 5, the first consumer-ready e-reader with a folding e-ink display, boasting a durability tested for over 200,000 bins. The Moo Ink 5 can produce over 50,000 shades of high resolution color, offering superior color to the other e-readers like Kindle Colorsoft. Very lightweight, the Moo Ink V is designed to be compact and portable, folding to a size smaller than a paperback book. The big unanswered questions are when it will become available and how much it will cost. Moo Ink 5.
Writing questions. Moo Inc., huh?
Are we going to move Jenna off of her Kindle? If you could fold up your Kindle into a teeny tiny thing and put it in your
It's
pocket,
already like that big. It's not that
it's still
big.
big.
Like how small. I
It's
feel
interesting that it's color.
Do you
That's
remember,
interesting.
like, in Zoolander, like the teeny tiny cell phone, like,
Yeah.
because cell phones were getting smaller and smaller. That's how I feel. I just feel like well, mine folds in half. Like, okay, like I just want it to work and have all my books on it. That's what I
Yeah. Yeah.
want.
I'm not sure how much I trust this technology, but I'm thinking of this from my Gen X brain because we had novelty technology growing up that,
Mhm.
sounded good in theory, but
Yeah.
then, in practical use, it kind of, would fall apart. It would wear in the middle or, something like that. So that's what I keep expecting to
You know,
see.
I also get wary with like folding things because I know they have tried to do folding phones, not
Yeah.
like the flip phones, but the actual, the screen folds and like
Yeah.
folding TVs and folding computers. And I feel like they never actually get very far because, with technology, the more like elements that you introduce is like, so like, what if one screen breaks? Like now you can
Yeah.
only use half of the device,
Right.
right? Like, I don't know. It just feels like it's opening up the door for like twice as many problems.
Yeah.
Why fold is Jenna's take on this. Why? Why
Yeah,
fold?
right. I don't get it. I really don't get it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm too old.
I mean, okay, I like the idea of a device that could be tablet sized when I need to use it, but phone sized when I'm carrying it around and I just want a real quick, you know, use, right? Like I like the idea of that. I'm just I just don't believe that I don't believe they've conquered this technology. I believe that,
Yeah.
you know, there's gonna be some downside to it that you're not expecting. And now I've invested in this thing. But whatever. That means a lot of them around and people are using them. And so, you know, maybe I'm just completely
We'll
Well,
I'm
I
find
just
think
out.
being
yes,
too old fogey about it. But
some people really like gadgets and they'll buy like the new things. I like to like kind of see, like let's see like the
yeah.
second and third generations come out. Like let's just see like what bugs get worked out in the meantime.
Eventually, this technology will start showing up at the flea market. That's when I invest in it. Is when it's already a
Yes.
little past its prime, still a little useful. Uh, okay, I like this story, and I have personal reasons for liking this story, but I'll tell you about those in a minute. So, I'm not a quote Gatsby scholar. I'm a quote Gatsby weirdo. In the early days of COVID, Andrew Clark started listening to part of the audiobook edition of The Great Gatsby, narrated by Jake Gyllenhaal. Is it Gyllenhaal or Gyllenhaal?
Gillen
Gyllenhaal, I
Gyllenhaal.
I'm going to say
think.
Gyllenhaal. Narrated by Jake Gyllenhaal every night before bed. Setting a sleep timer for 45 minutes, he'd finish the book every week or so and start all over again. In 2024, he stopped using the timer and allowed the book to play in his ears all night. Now he has listened to The Great Gatsby more than 200 times. Clark knows it's a weird choice, but doesn't plan to quit anytime soon. He can quit anytime he wants to. He doesn't have a problem. You've got a problem. Gatsby has become a part of him, and his understanding of the novel has shifted.
Listen, I'll
I have
let
a
Jake Gyllenhaal talk in my head like all night long too.
Same. That's what I was thinking when I read this. I'm like, good
Like,
choice for
listen,
narrator. I
I'm not
understand.
exactly sure that this has anything to do with Gatsby. But, uh,
uh,
I would like to know what other books has Jake narrated? Can we
I
get
don't
a
know. That's a good one to look
Christine,
up.
I
Yeah,
think
I
that
don't
we
know.
need to do some research on this and
I think so.
I think that people need to know. And by
So
the
this book
people,
Just,
I mean me and you.
yeah,
this book has
narrated
a
in
special
order.
place in my heart because in just after high school, I had a buddy of mine, and we used to kind of screw with each other or whatever. And what I did was I wrote a series of letters and aged them using, things like coffee and tea and whatever,
Hmm.
make them look aged, buried them, in places where he could find them. And basically what I did was say, I wrote him a series of letters claiming that a future version of me had managed to figure out time travel and I was stuck in the past. And so to make my living, I was posing as a writer. And so I implied that I had written The Great Gatsby. And so what's funny is I was trying to tell my wife that story shortly after we met, started dating, and we weren't married yet, but we were getting close. And so I had kind of tried to relay that story and we got interrupted, but so the only part she heard was that I had a soft spot for The Great Gatsby. And so she went and found me like an early edition and had it signed, not signed, but
Oh,
inscribed it and all that. And so I have never told her the truth behind
the
why
second
that book
half of
means
that
something.
story.
Yeah, yeah. But I did manage to
That's
fool my
hilarious.
friend for quite a while. And I said in the letter he couldn't say anything to me because he would disrupt the space-time continuum. But I had him fooled for a while because the letters seemed legit. So
I like The Great Gatsby. I mean, it is an interesting choice, but
yeah.
I still think the narrator
It
potentially has.
is an interesting choice. I pulled this quote out of the article because it was funny. Um, it's a bittersweet novel that ends with a murder-suicide preceded by a fatal car crash in which no one finds love, and the only character who ends up close to happy is a violent racist and serial cheater.
Mm,
Right. Yes.
a great
That
American love
is,
story.
Right.
it is an
Well,
interesting bedtime story.
it
I
is.
mean,
Correct.
I don't know. What
I
would you choose though to listen to 200 times?
Jake
I don't,
Gyllenhaal.
Jake.
I'm
You know what?
sorry. What was
In
the
all
actual question?
seriousness, regardless of well, it'd have to be a decent reader, but regardless of the identity of the reader, I really would listen to Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. I would listen to that.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a go-to book for me that I go back to a lot.
I don't know what I would listen to 200 times. I have to think about that.
200 times. I'm gonna have to think about that. I mean, there's a lot of things that I listen to a lot. 200 times, huh?
Yeah. I'd
Yeah.
listen to Heavy Are the Stones
Thank you.
by a certain J.D.
Can we
Barker
get
and
You'll have
Christina
some
Jake?
Engel.
very twisted nightmares if you listen to that 200
Do you
times.
think do you
Wait,
think Jake would narrate it? Um,
Maybe.
why not? I think we can make it happen.
Jake, if you're listening, we may have some work for you.
As we know you are, Jake.
Call JD. I'm sure he's got people that you can
Probably
talk
does.
to.
Probably does.
Oh, awesome.
Hey, this is Kevin Tumlinson, and it seems to me like you might need a little help. Maybe hand off all that stuff that's keeping you from writing. At Author Anchor, we connect authors with skilled, affordable virtual assistants trained specifically for the publishing world. Your personal VA handles everything from book production to marketing and social media, freeing you up to focus on what matters most, your writing. Book a discovery call today and we'll find that perfect VA for you. Plus, mention the Writers Inc. podcast and you'll get $50 off your first month. Visit authoranchor.com and get matched with your personal VA so you can just write.
Okay. Up this week, it's Joanna Penn. Joanna Penn writes nonfiction for authors and is an award-winning New York Times and USA Today bestselling thriller, dark fantasy, crime, and memoir author as J.F. Penn. She's also an award-winning podcaster and creative entrepreneur. So here she is, Joanna Penn.
I love when I get a chance to talk to old friends who aren't that old, frankly. Let me revise that. Who young, fresh-faced friends that I've known for a while. And that is certainly true of today's guest, Joanna Penn, who also writes under the name JF Penn. That's your fiction, right? But
Yeah.
today we're going to talk about something a little different. Actually, you talk about this quite a bit because you are the host of a very popular podcast, The Creative Pen. But welcome, Joanna Penn, to Writers Inc.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kevin. It's great to be here. And gosh, we've been around a long time now, haven't we?
I mean, I think there's very few names that are older than ours in this business, you know,
Certainly in the indie space,
in the indie
anyway.
space, in the indie
Mm.
publishing world, which is just rapidly expanding into a whole different universe than when I started, and I think when you started as well. But yeah, we've been doing this a long time. I welcome, first of all. Now you were on the show, and you're the one who reminded me of this. Like you were on the show early days back in like 2020. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
even before the pandemic, I was looking at it. Episode 9, I was on the show, and this is what's so funny looking back about podcasting and writing in the industry and where we've all been and where we're going. And I think that's what's really exciting. And I know this podcast, you have people who are prolific. And I was
Yeah.
thinking about this because we all have imposter syndrome, right? And I was thinking, oh, I find that word difficult. And then I look at what we've both written
Yeah.
over the years, even since 2020 or when we started, 15 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And I think anyone can be prolific if you keep writing year
Yeah.
after year after year and you're
Yeah.
still here.
Yeah. I interviewed someone yesterday who was like, "Wow, you have so many books. Like, how did you do it?" You know, and I'm like, I just kept writing for the past 20 some odd years. It just didn't stop. So yeah, that's how you become prolific. You just keep writing. So we're going to be talking about you because you've got a second edition of a book of yours that's been kind of popular in the author set. There it is on camera. For those who are just listening, it's a nice looking book. So you're going to have to go find it online. But we're talking about how to write nonfiction now in its second edition. We're going to talk about the updates to that. But let's loop back a little, Joe, because you did give us sort of your origin story on the first episode that you appeared on. But it's been years. Maybe your origin changed. Maybe something's different. But let's loop back and start talking about how you got started as an author. How'd you get into this business?
Mm. Well, way back, I was an IT consultant. I used to implement accounts payable systems into
How thrilling.
corporates.
That is
Yeah,
exciting.
super, super thrilling, but pretty highly paid, to be fair.
Yeah.
And so I was doing this across Europe, then in Australia and New Zealand. But it got to the point where, I had my house and had the mortgage and had investments, and I was doing this job, and I just hated it. I was like, early 30s. I was like, what am I doing with my life, as many people do? And this was around 2005, 2006. And I was like, what shall I do? I know I'll listen to American self-help gurus like Tony Robbins. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful for Americans, because you really, you have that vision. And so I started listening to all this, and I was like, do you know what? I think I'll write my own self-help book on how to change your career, how to find the job you really love. And I love research. So I started researching. So this was my first nonfiction book. And I wrote this book between like 2006, 7. And then I looked at the publishing industry, and I was in Australia at the time. And I was like, what? It's going to take 2 years to get a book deal. And then
Yeah.
it will take another year to turn up on the shelf. And I'm not going to make any money anyway. And so I self-published. This was before the Kindle, before the iPhone, before print on demand really took off, those very early days. And it didn't go so well, to be fair. It was a bit of a disaster. I did get on national TV and all this, but I sold like 100 books maybe. And so I was like, this is crazy. There has to be something better than this. And then what happened literally was the launch of the iPhone in 2007, the Kindle in 2007, and Smashwords at the time was the only way that international authors could sell to Americans.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is going to change the life of an author. This means I could actually make a living. And as I mentioned, I was highly paid. So I was never going to be a poor author in a garret.
Yeah.
So I wrote that first book, Career Change. I rewrote it later on. It's still out there. But then I also started blogging. I started my podcast in 2009. I was able to leave my job in 2011, by which time I'd written, I don't know, 4 or 5 nonfiction, 3 novels. And so I left my job, went full time in 2011, and pretty much I have been full time ever since, as an author of multiple genres and a podcaster and a speaker. So it really does stem from being absolutely miserable in my job and saying, I want to write, how can I travel? How can I be creative? But also deciding very early on, I want this to be a business that pays me at least 6 figures, hopefully multi 6 figures. And so that was a decision too. And I know that Writers Inc., you focus on craft and business, which is what I've been doing since then.
So in all this, you eventually came to the thriller genre, which seems
quite quickly. That was my first
pretty quickly,
novel.
yeah.
Yeah.
So by eventually, I mean almost instantly, but not quite instantly, because you started with nonfiction. Like, where's the line there? Like, how did you make that leap from nonfiction to a fiction career? Like, what prompted that?
What was interesting, it was on my podcast. I said on my show, I still have it on recording, I don't think I could write fiction because I don't think I'm creative enough.
Yeah.
And the person I was interviewing, a guy called Tom Evans, he said to me, I think you've got a block around fiction. And I was like, oh, and I bristled and I was like, no. And when I thought about it, I was thinking that I needed to write like a Pulitzer Prize winning literary novel. And so because I studied English literature, I went to Oxford. My mother was an English teacher. So I'd kind of been brought up to think that was the only valid work. And then I actually looked at my behavior. I was so miserable in my job, and every day I would read thrillers on the train to work, in the lunch hour with my sandwich, on the way home. I was just mainlining thrillers. And I love Dan Brown. When Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code came out, we write this in the same genre, action adventure.
Father of our industry, I think, or of our genre, I think.
Yes, exactly. So I wrote my first thriller, which is kind of in the same style as yours, and a Dan Brown style thriller action adventure, which is now called Stone of Fire. So that was 2009, and that kind of took off as well. So I've written far more novels and short stories than I have nonfiction. But it was interesting because I did have to change my mindset to really just believing that I am creative. I can release these blocks around that. And so I do want to encourage people listening. If you feel like, oh, I couldn't write that. Oh, another one, memoir. I thought for many years I couldn't write memoir because I was like, oh, it's too personal. I don't want to put myself out there. And then actually, since I was last on this show, I wrote my memoir,
Yeah.
Pilgrimage,
Yeah.
about solo walking ancient ways. And I know you're a person of faith, and so and that book was very important to me during the pandemic and
Yeah.
recovering from sort of midlife stuff. So I think that's another thing that time gives us is the ability to write in different genres, to experiment, to trust that creative process, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to overcome our self-doubt and to write those books of our hearts, because it's not all about business. It is also about writing those books that just, keep us awake and how we figure out the world, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think that because I think it's important for us to consider this whole thing of business, but do you think sometimes that the business aspect kind of takes over and robs us of some of the joy of the creative work?
I do still, for my fiction, I don't write to market. Now, my nonfiction, I kind
Mm.
of do. I mean, how to
Yeah.
write nonfiction, it's pretty written to market, as in,
Yeah.
you know whether you want this book or not. But for me, for example, with the nonfiction, Pilgrimage was a book of my heart. Writing the Shadow was a book of my heart. These are books that have not sold tons of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
but they are books that are important to me. And I think we do have to do both if you want to make a living as a writer. And of course, not everybody does. So
Yeah.
you could almost think of it as one for the money, one for the heart,
Yeah.
or just to balance things out. Or if people have a day job, which let's face it, most authors have a day job or other forms of income, then you can really just write the books of your heart. But of course, even if you write the book of your heart, you still want people to read it. So we still
Yeah.
have to keep marketing in mind. But I think that you can't have a long-term creative career unless you are writing things you love. I just think we've both seen what's so interesting again about how long we've been around is we've seen people come and go.
Yeah.
And often the people who go are the people who either burn out because they created too fast, too quickly,
Yeah.
and couldn't sustain it,
Yeah.
or the people who are like, I'm done. I am tired of writing and I am out of here.
Yeah.
Or people who didn't make enough money. And so those of us who've been around now in the indie space since the beginning, we have a balance between books we love to write and
Mm.
also our income streams.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, sometimes I think about it and, I realize that like for me, I can't stop the writing. Like that's the part that whether I made any money or not, whether I was successful or not, whether anyone knew anything about them or not, or read them or not, I'd still have to write these books. So,
Yeah, I actually have this idea around English Gothic cathedrals,
mm,
right? And this is playing on me, and I feel the same way as I did about my book Writing the Shadow, which took several decades to basically come out in some form. And I have a feeling that this Gothic cathedral book is going to be like that. And
yeah,
I was kind of pushing against that for a while. I was trying to wrangle the ideas into something, and I'm a discovery writer, so I don't
yeah,
plot or plan or any of that. I just start writing. And every time I was writing, I was like, I don't even know what this is. But now I feel like I've been there before.
yeah,
And what I realized is this will take time. And again, I didn't do this earlier on in my career. I was like, no, I have to do this now. I've started, so I'll finish. But now I'm like, okay, I will finish, but it might take time. So I'm putting that idea to the side. And in fact, one of the reasons I went to do the How to Write Nonfiction, the second edition, because I was like, I know this needs to be done. I want to update it with a whole load of stuff that has been going on, but I also need a project that I can finish and
yeah,
that I can publish and that is useful to people while my brain noodles around on this kind of odd idea around Gothic cathedrals.
yeah. And that's a nonfiction book as well, the Gothic Cathedral book.
Do not know what the
Yeah.
hell that is.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if people remember Gormenghast. Did you read
Yeah.
Gormenghast?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in my mind, there's a bit of Gormenghast there, but there's also I'm just fascinated with architecture, and so it might
Yeah.
be a fiction series, it might be a memoir, it might be Memento Mori, kind of all
Yeah.
of that stuff,
I am
but
so
interesting.
I'm in my yearning to write a memoir phase right now.
Ah,
It seems like
You must do it.
I've got to do it. But the problem is every time I've tried starting one, I get
Mm.
hung up on, oh, my life is boring. Like there's nothing about my life anyone's gonna want to
That's
read.
so this is what's so not true. So first of all, one of the reasons that I wanted to update this edition was because it also contains my tips on memoir, because I had not written a memoir when I did the first
Yeah,
edition in 2018,
yeah.
and memoir has changed my writing style so much. And what I would say to you, Kevin, and everyone listening is now like, no, we want your memoir, Kevin, because what you think is not interesting, your whole life is interesting. Because
Yeah.
remember, it's not what happened, it's how you responded, it's your emotional journey,
That's
it's
right.
it's
Yeah.
aspects of relationships and faith, and like your stuff in your van I'm really interested in, and your career changes, and like there's so much richness in all of our lives. You don't have to have done something dramatic.
Right. That's where I think I and a lot of other people get hung up. But that's a great segue. Let's shift now. Let's talk about the second edition of the book, which you can see on camera right behind you. You've got it nice and
Oh, that's,
prominently
yeah, that's the
placed.
large print.
That's but how to write nonfiction pretty answers the question right away. This is one of the things I tell authors a lot. Like, you're going to write nonfiction, if your goal is to solve a problem, title it in such a way that you're presenting the solution to their problem like right there. So you right away, Joe, you're following all the best professional advice of the industry, which I probably got from you anyway. So let's talk about that. Like first, what's the key here between, the differences between edition one and edition two? Like what prompted you to want to write the book in the
Hmm.
first place, but why rewrite it?
Yeah, so the rewrite, it really, like as I said, one of the biggest things is how my own craft has changed. And I would say this to people, it's either you have changed
Hmm.
or what you're writing about has changed, or both of those things.
Yeah.
And so because I wanted to include the memoir side of things, there are new chapters on writing memoir, also bringing our personal experience into any form of nonfiction, whether that's self-help book or, anything you write needs to have a personal element. Even with fiction, I think authors need to do an author's note now,
Yeah.
like more and more
Yeah.
importantly, because let's face it, AI can write a lot of things and can definitely do generic nonfiction. So we
Yeah.
need to make these things as personal as possible. So I had felt I'd changed, but also the industry has changed since 2018. And I mentioned AI there in a very good way. The AI tools can be very useful for things like research. I've just been playing with Google Deep Research, which is
Yeah.
brand new and is incredible. Perplexity, you can use ChatGPT to do things like, writing your sales description. You can find comp titles. So I wanted to include prompts in the book for things that I think are useful with AI tools,
Interesting.
although I have said not for writing publishable first draft material. That's
Yeah.
up to individuals. But also, the business side had changed. In the original edition, we both know the upheaval in the industry. There are
Yeah.
companies that have come and gone. There are tools that have changed. So I wanted to update those more practical things about publishing, marketing, writing. So yeah, also from a business perspective for people listening, I have other books that are old, like Career Change.
Yeah.
I did rewrite that once in 2012, but not since then. And the reason being, when you look at from a business perspective, which of your books actually make good money?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
one of my top selling books. And
Yeah.
so it's important to me that as I advertise it, that it is up to date. And instead, I was feeling like it was like 90%, and I wanted to get it back up to 100%. But what I would say to people is you don't need to do a new edition, either fiction or nonfiction, to just update the files. If it's less than 10% and you
Mm.
self-publish, you can just update those files and just upload new files.
Yeah.
But this really just felt like a whole new book. Also, one more thing, I'm narrating the audiobook this time.
Oh,
And
very
back
good.
in 2018, I had outsourced that. So this is another thing, another tip for people. I also narrate my own short stories for fiction, but your voice, and you're a voice as well, voice brand.
Yeah.
This is an important personal thing that again solidifies us as human in people's minds. So yeah, all of those things meant to me it was worth the time and energy to do a new edition.
I you uh, you'll be proud of me because I just narrated not one of mine yet, but I just narrated my first audiobook last week, and I'm doing
Really?
some
I would have thought you've been
revision.
doing that for years.
It's just I know I've tried it a few times, and it's like, oh, this is so much time and work to
Hmm.
do.
It's
Do I really?
tiring.
Yeah, wouldn't I rather just pay someone else to do it? And because I'm lazy. But no, just did the first one. So we're gonna see how that goes. I've cut
Mm.
my teeth on it. Now I'm gonna follow your lead, Joe. I'm gonna start narrating some of my books. You know,
I
I'm gonna
think I
revise
think
one of
it's a
mine too. You've inspired me
mm,
because 30 Day Author, I released that in like 2016. I've never done a revision of that book, and so
mm.
many things have changed. So I think I'm gonna follow your lead on that. You've already inspired me.
Yeah.
See that?
Oh, no, well, I'm glad because I think, well, that's a really good example. You will have changed.
Yeah,
The examples you want to put in the book have changed.
yeah,
And the important thing is also thinking about the reader. What we understand about our readership also changes over
right.
time. And so we can adjust. I mean, in a similar way with fiction, we often change covers. We might retitle books like Stone of Fire was originally called Pentecost. And then I
Yes.
realized that it needed to be something else. So I changed that. I've changed, both of us have changed covers multiple times.
Yeah.
And this is both the challenge and the joy of being an independent author, is you
Yeah.
can put stuff out and then as things change. I mean, traditional publishers change covers and update editions. This is not a specifically indie thing. It's just we have the freedom to do
Mhm.
that. So yeah, you should definitely do it and narrate that audiobook because audiobook for non-fiction is much more profitable, I find, than fiction because non-fiction readers and listeners, they just mainline it and they are not so price sensitive. So they will get a shorter audiobook on the platforms for
Yeah.
their credit or whatever, and you still get the full amount.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's good advice right there. Okay. Yeah. I actually would love to see all of the indie authors out there sort of embrace that. I think, the technology's there to make things a lot smoother, a lot easier now than when I first tried to do it. So I just let
Mm.
I just let all that intimidate me. But anyway, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so let's talk more about the book because one of the things I'm very interested in, and we've already discussed this a little, but memoir keeps coming up in my life, so that's a sign the universe wants me to pay attention over and over again. But you had that experience with writing a memoir. Are you going to write another memoir? Is memoir something you can do over and over?
Yeah, well, this is one of the interesting things. So remember, it's not biography. It's
Right.
not like I was born and then this happened, this happened, this happened. Memoir is more about a transformation.
Yeah.
So and the example I like to give is an incredibly best-selling memoir, Wild, from
Yeah.
Lost to Found, by Cheryl Strayed, which
Yes.
people might have seen the movie with Reese Witherspoon, but it's from Lost to Found, and she walks a trail, but it is one particular point in her life. But actually, the memoir has all the stuff about being lost in life and
Hmm.
then finding yourself. So, and my pilgrimage book's kind of similar, walking these ancient ways brought all these things up in my head around history, walking in the path of history and feeling insignificant and all of these things that come up within ourselves. But realistically, that book was both a period, only really 4 weeks of actual walking
Yeah.
over the period of 3 years, but it was also decades of little vignettes about my life. So when you think about themes, it's more about themes. So for example, your van life experience,
Yeah.
even though you're not doing that anymore, right? But you did that
No.
for a period.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a really interesting thing. Like, sure, some of the stories might be about this happened in this place and this happened, but actually it's more about why the hell did you do that anyway? Like,
Yeah.
where did you start? And then why did you stop? Why did you end up finding a home? I find finding a home a very interesting concept because I've been traveling a lot in my life. And so it's more about these emotional elements that other people can relate to because I don't want to live in a van, but I'm interested in some of the reasons you did. And so I think that's why people read memoir. It's not for understanding the physical thing. Like nobody really wants to walk the Pacific Coast Trail
I
Pacific
do.
Crest Trail. Yeah, I know, but it's like the nine weeks or whatever it is, 90 weeks.
Right.
I knew it's very, very long. But so many millions of people have read Wild and it's touched them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they feel lost and they want to be found. And so that's what I would encourage people to think with memoir and nonfiction in general. Like it's got to be a transformation. So how to write
Yeah.
nonfiction? You start having not written nonfiction and you finish by having written. So there is always a transformation in nonfiction of some kind. So in terms of me, whether I'll write another memoir, I think I definitely will. And it's just a case of what that might be. But I'm turning 50 in 2025. So, and I do feel some
Welcome.
things,
Welcome to the
yes,
club.
yeah, some things coming up. And this might be why you feel it. I do feel
Yeah.
like, and in fact, I'll just admit to it, when I was a younger writer, I used to look at older people writing memoirs and go,
Yeah.
oh, it's such a cliche.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you get there yourself and you think, oh, yeah, that's why older people write memoir, because you actually have something that you've thought about and you
Right.
can shape into something.
I don't think anybody really starts writing if they don't have something to say, you know. I mean, that's the whole point of
Mm,
it. And you're like me, or maybe I'm like you. I don't know what the order of things really was, but we both have a lot to say. We've got the books, fiction and nonfiction, and we have podcasts galore. We speak on stage. You clearly have a lot to say. What? How do you determine though? So, like you mentioned writing to market with nonfiction. How does the writer determine, okay, there's a need here and I'm the one to fill it? How does the writer come to that point?
well, I think this is where it's the question is who are you
Yeah.
and do you already have an audience? So a lot of nonfiction is written by people who already have an audience. Maybe they are a speaker, maybe they have a business, maybe they're a medical professional, maybe they're someone who deals with social issues, maybe they're like someone who's a knitting expert. I mean, most people have some kind of expertise or life experience that
Yeah.
drives them into wanting to help others with that particular thing. And so you have generally have a target market in mind. Why I started writing books for authors, well, like that first one, Career Change, I needed to change my career.
Yeah.
And then all my subsequent books since have been, I need to learn how to do this. I will write a book and it will help me figure out how to do this. So I think that's probably why. But in terms of then, if you have an audience, then it is about listening a lot to what people want, but
Hmm.
also it is sometimes you just don't know. And I think this is the benefit of a longer career. We all know that there's an 80-20 rule. 20% of our books make 80% of the money. That's
Yeah.
true for publishers, that's
Yeah.
true for everything.
Yeah.
So what we can do though is just be a bit more free. What I feel with my nonfiction is that it never really goes massive spike and then disappears off the the charts. It kind of just keeps on selling. So something like Pilgrimage, every year when people want to walk the Camino de Santiago, I
Hmm.
get a little bit of a spike and I get some more traffic and I get some sales because people wanting to walk the Camino is a thing. It's like
Yeah.
a little subgenre, but it's so tiny that it's
Yeah.
not, you would never ever write to that market. But once you have written to it in a space, then you can find people who might be interested. So yeah, I don't want to tell people, and especially not memoir. I don't think anyone writes memoir to market. You write because it bubbles up from inside you,
Right. Yeah.
and then you just see where it ends up, I
Doesn't
think.
that break all the rules though? Because like you're told as authors on podcasts like this one and others that don't write the book and then wait for the audience. Go find the audience and write the book. But the advice you just gave seems like the opposite of that. Like if you're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
write
not
memoir,
memoir. I
yeah,
dare anyone to say you write
I
memoir to
right.
market.
I do think so. Like your book, Pilgrimage, which is
Mm,
wonderful, um,
thank
and is in the same vein as Wild, and
you. Mm,
also another book I love, A Walk in the Woods, Bryson's book. I'm an aficionado of those kind of because
mm,
one of my dreams is to hike these trails on both sides of our country. There's a big one here in Texas that I do in bits and pieces. So I'm on board. I'm your audience on
mm.
that, right? there is a niche audience. That whole idea, I've been talking about this a lot lately, that the idea of the 1,000 true fans, right?
Mm.
Well, is it possible that there are 1,000 people in a given, genre or category or local town or whatever? Like, isn't that market enough for writing a book or no?
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think, like we talked earlier, some of these books just we have to write them.
Yeah.
But then also, so Pilgrimage, I launched on Kickstarter,
Yeah.
as you know, because you bought an edition, thank you.
Hmm.
And that made really good money. It made me like over $30,000, which for most memoir, you're never going to make that. And then it went on to win a prize for best nonfiction memoir at London Book Fair. So these books can serve other purposes other than just,
Right.
hitting an Amazon bestseller list. I mean, that, so I feel like the business side of doing things like a Kickstarter, when you really do reach out to those 1,000 true fans. But then also, here is another tip, just to be really practical. If you have a book in a very small niche, then Amazon ads are generally a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And you
Yes.
can target specific books in
Well, they used to
specific
be before
markets.
you said that on this podcast, and now.
Well, to be fair, I'm probably the only one paying for ads on Pilgrimage. I mean,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really is. So compared to thrillers, you and I both know it is practically impossible to compete on paying for ads for
Yeah.
thrillers
Yeah.
with the expense of that now. So part of having a sustainable author career is having these smaller books that potentially you can make multiple streams of income to offset the potential chance of hitting some big swing
Right.
with a thriller. I mean, we can't all be JD Barker.
Right. Sometimes JD's not even JD Barker.
Exactly. Not all his books sell, a
Right.
ton. It really is. But JD loves writing. We all love writing. So we keep going. And I do feel like sometimes people think that that first book or this book is going to be the one.
Yeah.
And then generally that doesn't happen. I
Wow.
mean, do we know anyone that happened for?
I mean, I know some people where that's happened. Yes, but they are the unicorns of life.
Mm.
And God bless them. I'm really supportive of them, even though I want to stab them. Uh,
One
yeah,
day, Kevin. I mean, we're
we're
still young.
still young. Yeah, I'm only 52. I've got time, at least 3 more years. So I'm interested now in this piece of, and we're getting close. We'll have to wrap up, but I'm interested now. Something you said sparked an idea for me, which is that I think that one of my hangups, actually, with writing
Mm,
memoir or any other nonfiction, like I don't want my career to veer off into nonfiction. It did that once, and I've seen others. You and I both know people in common who the nonfiction side of their writing and their work became the business and became the only
mm.
thing they had time for. So I've been diligent about not falling into that pit. But maybe it's unavoidable. I don't know. But I want my writing, I want everything I write to funnel people back to the grander body of work. Is that a consideration? Did you make that consideration? Do you think that's something that people should be thinking about with nonfiction, memoir in particular, but anything
Mm.
they're writing?
Well, to be fair, I mean, I do think of my body of work as all of my books,
Yeah.
although I have unpublished some, like we all have.
Hmm.
But for example, Writing in the Shadow, like I said, it took decades to write.
Yeah.
That book, it was like a staircase to writing that book. I had to write all the other books to get
Yeah.
to that book.
Yeah.
And when I write nonfiction again, it may well be quite a different type of nonfiction, I guess more like Pilgrimage or more like some of these other things. But I do feel like the creative urge sometimes cannot be denied. And sometimes it just wants to write nonfiction. I
Yeah.
also find it's a bit of a palate cleanser from a big book. So my last novel, Blood Vintage, is actually with an agent and is out on submission. And as you know, that is a frustratingly long
Yes.
process.
Yes.
And again, I was like, I just want to have a book and get it out there for the new year and a self-help, get it done. But that book, Blood Vintage, was took quite a toll. And when we do give everything we have into a novel, which is what I think we should do, we feel empty. empty.
Yeah.
And when I feel that emptiness, I need to fill the creative well in order to write another novel. And I cannot personally, I cannot just go back to back to back to back with fiction. It's not how my creative process works.
Yeah.
So now I've done this second edition. I'll probably write a short story next, maybe a couple of short stories, and then I'm going to write the next novel. But to me, my creative process cannot write all the time fiction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, but like you said, you have to decide what you want. I'm quite an intuitive writer with what I choose, the projects I choose next. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why.
I think that's why now that you say it that way, that's why I love Substack. That's where that's where I'm refilling my well, basically, by writing those posts every week for my readers, and I get great feedback and I get all that. So yeah, okay, I'm on board. All right. Well, look, before we tune out here, what one question I want to ask you, and I try to ask this of everybody I chat with for this show, but and it's pretty cliche, really, but if you had advice that you were going to give after your career and all the ups and downs and all the things you've learned and reapplied as of this new book, what's the thing? What's the thing that you wish you had known that you would tell the incoming Joanna Penn in this business?
Oh, it is a tough one. But in terms of what I would want to tell myself, it's that you will get better. I think when we start, we learn so much. Like I did read all the books and did all the classes before I actually published anything.
Yeah.
But even then, and I worked with editors and I still do work with an editor on every book. And yet it is the number of words we write, the number of words we publish, the feedback from readers, the years that go by, the conferences we go to, the people we meet, all of this improves us. And maybe this is just life in general. I mean, how valuable is anyone in year one of their career? Like, you start a new job in year one. It doesn't earn you much. You're not very good at it, but you carry on and you become an expert and you keep going and you keep writing and you keep publishing. And now I almost feel like every book I'm still learning something new, and I'm finally heading towards the type of book that I might get to one day. For example, The Stand by Stephen King is pretty much my favorite novel. And when I read that first many, many years ago, I was like, this is part of the reason I couldn't write fiction, because I was comparing myself to a man who had been writing for 50 plus years by the time I read that book. And so we compare ourselves to people who are so far ahead of us on the journey. It's really unfair. But now I feel like I might be able to write, not The Stand, obviously, but something that ambitious one day. And the only way I'm going to get there is by keeping going. So yeah, I would say if you're starting now, just keep writing. You will get better, and your craft and your business will improve. And that is a happy thing.
Well, I look forward to reading The Stand 2, Electric Boogaloo by J.F. Penn. Thank you for being a part of the show, Joe, but also just thank you in general, because you've been you've been a leader in this industry for so long. Even when I was coming in, I'd probably published like maybe 2 years before your show started, but once your show was there, like I tuned in regularly. So thanks for being a part of the landscape of indie publishing.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kevin.
You got it. I said this in the interview, but it's always good to talk to Joe. She and I go so far back, way, way back. I think the first time I met her was in Austin, Texas, at the Smarter Artist Summit. But I'd been a guest on her show a number of times before that, so it was great to chat with her. But so she talks about how she left a miserable corporate job to write full time. So my question for you guys is, how can feeling unhappy in a job push you to succeed as a writer? And have you ever had that experience?
Yes, I actually think that you have to have some semblance of unhappiness to write. And I know that sounds really bad saying it out loud, but here's what I mean. I mean that when you write, you have to like dig into like some really, really, really deep emotions, like to get even happy emotions right on the page. And I think, to like kind of tap into sort of those general human struggles, like you have to have grappled with something on a fairly large level at some point in your life,
Yeah.
to like really get to the heart of what that universal human struggle is.
Yeah.
So, I know that it's like a cliche, like artists are temperamental and moody and have all these problems, but like I do think that you have to at least have had thought about things on a really profound level. And I think that that most naturally comes up when you're unhappy and trying to figure out why you're unhappy and what you're
Yeah.
going to do about it. And, how do you get over it? Is it me? Is it the world? Is it the job? Is it the relationship? Is it the family? Like you kind of have to have something, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you definitely. My husband is like, stop writing yourself. Every character you write is you. Not in Heavier on the Stones, but a lot of times he's like, you've written the same book 3 times. Stop trying to figure yourself out. So I definitely think there is some of that in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I do it because my work is very repetitive and I get bored.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So if I don't have some other kind of outlet, I probably lose my mind, or I'd have to do another hobby. I don't know, something else creative. But
Yeah.
yeah, doing the same thing on like autopilot for
Yeah.
decades can drive you to other pursuits.
I
Yeah.
feel like the office workplace, the traditional office workplace that we know in Western culture is kind of a microcosm of like the sort of struggles you would face if you were, just trying. You could look at it as symbolically related to the sort of struggles you'd face in like various ages,
Mm.
Yeah.
because there's a kind of warrior mentality that happens. Uh,
It's like the modern day allegory of the cave. Like I
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like, the office is sort of like, because you get in there and it's like they lull you with like
yeah,
benefits and, steady work and weekends off, right? And then, your IRA and are you fully vested yet? And you're like, you kind of get all these things that are sort of like little traps. And,
yeah, yeah,
then it gets like
Yeah.
repetitive, but, oh, is the jog my, oh, I have insurance. Would I have the same amount of insurance? Like you just have all these things. And so you don't actually want to leave. And so you kind of get lulled into this
yeah.
sort of like numbed state, I think.
So if you treat all that like allegory, you can kind of mine that for good stories. And if you're
Yeah.
really truly bored in your job, like there were jobs I had, and I've got I admit a very eclectic work history, but there were some desk jobs in there,
Yeah.
where I was in the cubicle farm, and that was probably where some of my best ideas came from because
Mhm.
I'm not working. I mean, come on, let's face it, you're not really doing
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
you know,
I
and
think it's
so
Yeah.
all right.
I think it's
Uh,
interesting.
Yeah. All the best stuff I do is because I'm bored writing. And like the
yeah,
brain computer interface stuff is just because I wanted to. I was like, what is
yeah,
that? Can I do that? And so now we're doing it, you know? So
yeah.
Well, and
That's
it's
really
such a
interesting,
good
though.
yeah.
human
Yeah,
behavior, right? Because you
Yeah.
have all these, you're surrounded by people, right? Like all these personalities and like how, like you can go into any corporate meeting room today and like
right.
you're gonna find like, the big like toxic frat masculine guy that never outgrew high school, right? Like the one that talks over everyone. You're gonna have like the connivers, you're gonna have like the soft-spoken ones, you're gonna have the ones that do all the actual work. Like you're gonna have all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, yeah. So she talks about sort of balancing passion projects with the books that pay the bills. Uh,
Yeah.
one for the heart, one for the money. So how do you juggle creative projects when you're making a living?
Well, the
Uh,
nice part is I don't have to make my living from my creative work. So I just do
See
what I
that?
want.
Yeah, I go back and forth on that, by the way, as to whether or not that's a good thing or something that I think it would crush me and kill me.
I think it
Crush my
depends on
soul.
what your regular job is. Although you've had like 20
yeah,
of them. So I guess if you didn't find one that didn't crush you and kill you, I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
novelist is all you got. I don't know.
That's why I kept changing roles though, is
Yeah.
because like I'd get kind of I don't want to say bored. It wasn't really about boredom. I was feeling unfulfilled, right?
Yeah.
And felt like I can do different and more and better. And
Hmm.
so I would change careers. And I didn't just change jobs, like I'd change entire industries and do entirely different
Yeah.
things. But if you look at my list of work over my lifetime, like there's things that are not traditional jobs, you know. Like I was a PI and I was, you know, there's all these things that
Hmm.
have nothing to do with, you know, 9 to 5 grind, but
Yeah. I think it depends. Like, I don't hate my job. I just would like to maybe do it half time. I think even if I was doing like making a livable wage with writing, I
yeah.
don't think I would quit my other job. I think I would just
Yeah.
do less of it.
Yeah,
But
I've
I don't
always
hate it.
been, even with my freelance work, like there are weeks where I work more than 40 hours
Yeah.
doing various things. But for the most part, I try to keep it, at under 30 hours so that I have, 10 to 20 hours a week to write, which sometimes goes good and sometimes doesn't. But I do find that when the more I've started to like sort of let go of beating myself up, like when I do sort of get into these creative, it's like a flurry of creativity will happen, and I'm very energized and very excited, and I will get a lot of things done.
Yeah.
And so I think you just have to find your temperament. Like, I don't know, like I can see I have read authors who will like draft and then they'll draft their next book while they're editing. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
they're using different muscles
Yeah.
throughout the day, so it's not like focusing entirely on one, but you're not doing the same thing. You're not like drafting multiple novels at the same time. It's like you're just kind of constantly like shifting back and forth. I think
Yeah.
I could probably do that.
I used to do that before the burnout, the great burnout.
The great
But so
burnout.
now I actually have other little things that are can sometimes be tangentially related. Like, you know, one of the things that I do with every book is I create a cover, even if, you know, I even created one for the one JD and I are doing together. Even if we don't ever use that cover, it's fine. It was just part of my process to kind of finish.
Mhm.
And that's still creative work, but it's a different, comes from a different part of me. And
Mhm.
so, you know, it helps me kind of shift gears.
Yeah.
So I do little things like that. I don't have hobbies. I'm terrible about hobbies. Like I really wish I had some, but every time I start a hobby, it turns into a career. Like I can't seem to just, you know, if I took up crochet, I'd have a small Etsy store full of, you know, probably writing related crochet items is probably what would
I think
happen.
there's a market for that.
Yeah, I think that now that you said that, you need to start
Yeah.
that. I think you
I'm gonna
do.
call it Write One, Pearl Two.
Good.
Oh, that's knitting, but that's
That's
okay.
knitting.
It
That's
still
not
works.
crochet. That's okay.
Well,
Um,
now you're just
I
picking. Is
want you
it,
to crochet
and would
custom
that be
book covers. I'm
nitpicking?
all in for that.
Oh,
Uh,
that would be interesting.
cute little book like ornaments and things that would
Yeah.
be adorable.
Yeah, I'm not doing any of that. So
Cute little
that's
cute little characters reading a book so you can sit it on your shelf. Come
yeah.
But
on.
just hear me out. You could have that as your giveaways. You could knit little books to give
Oh,
away at your
I
tables.
while I
Kevin.
don't
Crochet.
disagree, I didn't know the difference between knitting and crochet,
But
so
you
I'm not
will.
taking this up
I
anytime
believe in you,
No,
soon.
Kevin.
one has two and one only has one. It's
Mhm.
very easy.
One needle.
One needle, one needle, two loops. All right. So yeah, if you, I'm glad at least one of you caught that joke. Uh,
That's
let's
oh
see if I
Lord.
don't if I disrupted myself too much. So, do you ever update old work? You ever go back and update stuff you wrote in the past?
No.
I really
Maybe I will
wish
one
JD
day.
was here because he's the one I wanted to ask that
I know
question
he
of.
probably does. He's probably screaming at the monitor right now.
He can
But
answer. He can answer next week.
none of my
Right.
well, you know what? I did like yes, I have recovered something and put it on a different platform when I had rights back. So I guess that is sort of updating, but not like
That was the whole Kindle Vella thing
yeah.
that you were. Yeah,
So
that makes
I
sense.
guess not like updating text.
Yeah,
But I think if you're doing not nonfiction, it's more important that you keep current with your text than it is with fiction.
that's a good
Fictions, I,
point.
I
Yeah,
feel like you can recover, and that's good. New modern covers, but for nonfiction, I feel like you have to do more stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know. I mean, I guess like yeah, with fiction, I don't actually like it when authors like rework their novels. There was actually a big author with a big series that had just done that, that I won't name. Um, and like the idea that now, because the series was not complete, so we're like almost to the end, but now if you really want to understand like the last three books, you have to reread the new
Oh, that
version
would
of the
irritate me.
first four books. And it's
Yeah.
like, I appreciate that, she's grown as a writer and, wanted to tell the story that, for myriad reasons, she couldn't the first round, but also like wait until the series finished and then do like,
Yeah.
you know, then
Yeah.
do it. And then
Yeah.
give your readers the option. So I don't know. I mean, God, that gets so weird.
Yeah. I mean, I have done it. Well, first of all, I update my covers every couple of years. I refresh them, and it's getting harder as I get more books. So I don't know how much longer I'll be able to keep doing that. But the a lot of my earliest books, had problems, and I knew it. And when I got to a certain skill level, I just couldn't leave it anymore, And so I
Yeah.
went and did updates to a lot of those, and I think some of them still need. I think they'd benefit from another round, but
Yeah.
I
That's
I
hard
try
though,
not to
because it's like,
substantially.
what's the benefit of doing that versus just writing a new book,
This
right?
is true, and I've had people
Yeah.
call that out. And I guess my reasoning, the reason I went ahead and did it was some people are still discovering me via those books, and so
Mm,
I want that to be representative of my work, and so it's a little hard to just leave things when it's problematic, but
yeah.
and that's
Fair
also it's an
enough.
advantage of the indie space to be
Yeah.
able to
Yeah,
do that,
that's
but.
true.
Yeah, I try not to change the story substantially. Like I did have one I did change substantially because I had screwed up, like I had a character who was killed off like midway through the book, ended up being the bad guy, with no logical explanation. And so I'm like, well, I gotta fix that. Because I had people calling that out, like in the
Yeah.
reviews and stuff, So, and it was an honest mistake. It was because I wasn't editing as much as I should at that point in my life. But I don't know. It's a tough call. And I've even had
Yeah.
some of my nonfiction stuff. I keep threatening to go back and update. Like I have a book called 30 Day Author, which holds up. But I'm like, I could go back and touch that up and do a new edition. And I've had a good friend of mine actually talked me out of it twice now. He's talked me out of it because he's like, why waste the time? Just go write the next book.
Yeah. And
I
I
do
think
get that
unless that is
advice,
a huge money maker for you and there are significant
which is not
updates, I would
right.
leave it alone.
Right. It's
Yeah.
just not.
I
Yeah.
do
It's
think
it's
it is
defunct.
more like expected in nonfiction. I mean, like you go to the nonfiction section and like, there's always updated,
Yeah.
right, editions. Like they update it as like the science changes or the information changes, or they'll like add a new chapter to make it keep it
Yeah.
relevant. And I think that that's fine. I do think it gets trickier with fiction. Like I get it, but also like I don't know. That's
Yeah.
that's hard.
What about memoir though? Because that's specifically what Joe is talking about when she's talking. She does nonfiction that's aimed at like the how-to kind of market, especially for
Like
Like
authors,
updating
updating
marketing
your
memoir, you
stuff.
mean?
memoir?
But yeah, that's what I'm asking about. It's like because
I find that more like
she's
that
talking about memoir in
that's
this.
more like
Yeah.
towards the fiction side. I know it's not
Yeah.
Yeah,
fiction, but it's not factual information you're needing to update like,
right.
Yeah.
Like your childhood's not going to change
yeah, probably
Yeah.
not.
significantly.
So you would only update that and the same reason I updated like my early
Yeah.
fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you guys, this is the last question, by the way, so we can roll on out. But I mean, do you guys I think about writing a memoir. I could write a memoir about all the times I've thought about writing memoirs.
I think you should, but I never
Yeah.
have. I liked what Joanna said. It's not what happened that it's important, it's how you responded, which
Yeah.
for me, I was like, well, that's an interesting way to think about it because maybe and I'm sure I have things that I can write about that would be interested, like people would be
Yeah.
interested in, it may be helpful to them, but I don't want to. So I'm just gonna write fiction.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't I don't know that I ever would. I mean, I kind of think the same thing, like there are things that have happened to me that probably, how I got through them would be helpful maybe for someone else. But also like there's 1,000 people who have probably been through similar things, who have written similar things, who have, gotten it with the same tools and coping mechanisms and lessons learned. And, they probably did a better job than I would be. And I don't know. I guess maybe I feel like I'm willing to be vulnerable in fiction. I don't know that I'm willing to be vulnerable in
Yeah.
nonfiction. I don't know that I really feel the need to expose myself in that way.
Same,
Yeah.
Jenna, same.
I-
Beautiful
It's not
phrasing.
that I have anything to, that I'm like hiding or anything. It's just, I don't know. It does get hard because it is so it's easy if you write about something in fiction and you get a review and they're just like, this isn't realistic. Like, you might bristle a little and be like, I mean, well, it is, or like no one would react that way. And it's like, well, I did. But when you're actually writing about like your life, because that's a character. So there's like a separation. Like you have some distance. But if someone like were to get on there and just be like, you're a terrible person and I can't believe that you had any of these thoughts, and I don't need to go back to therapy.
I get enough of that from family dinners. Thank you very much. I don't need to go assistance.
I don't need to get I like having a little bit of distance from that. So I don't have that urge.
Well, be on the lookout for my memoir.
Aggressively
it's called
precocious.
Too Many Titles to Choose From. That's the name of mine.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. Well, who's coming up for us next week, Christine?
Up next week, it's Serena Bowen. Serena is a USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling author of contemporary fiction. Her books have been on best of lists at Goodreads, Audible, the New York Public Library, and Amazon. So that's what's coming up next week. Serena Bowen. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.